Hi everyone, in this video we're going to talk about how you can create this testimonial component which is there on Aceternity UI with TailwindCSS and Frame of Motion. So this is the testimonial that we are talking about, and if you click on the next buttons you'll see that the image flips and comes on top, and also you see this blur text effect that is taking place. So this is one way to animate testimonials onto your website, and this looks really cool. You can also embed it onto your portfolio websites or onto your freelance projects or wherever. This fits almost all playful themes, and today we're going to learn how you can make your own component like this with Frame of Motion and TailwindCSS. So let's get right into our code. I already have the boilerplate set up here, wherein I have a demo component called testimonials with images, and I also have an array of object which has all the details related to the testimonials. For example, the quote, the name, the designation, and the source of the image that we are going to see. So if we quickly map over to these testimonials, let's say. So if you see all the testimonials which are there. So we already have a set of object or an array of objects with us, which we can use to play with. So let's quickly get over to the website. We'll quickly check how the component looks here. And this is pretty much straightforward. We have a grid of 2, wherein the first one has the images and the second one has the text or the quote or the name of the person around it. So let's see how we can build that. Quickly going on to this, we already have the map set up. What I'll do is I'll create an outer div for it and give it a class name of grid. Grid will make sure that the grid that we need to use into our component is there in place, and if we use grid calls to, it'll separate it into a grid of 2. And we also want to have a gap of 12 so that it's nicely arranged. So now if you go back to the component, you see we already have a grid. I also want to have a max width of, let's say, 4XL, and so that it is center aligned and looks exactly how we want it. So now you see everything is separated into grid of 2. Now what we're going to do is we're going to have images onto the left and the quote onto the right, and we don't want to display everything at once. We want to have buttons that will flip over to the next testimonial or the previous testimonial. So let's see how we can do it. First, I want to have a state of active and set active. This will keep track of which testimonial is active and what we need to show onto the website. And to use that, we'll have to use use client directive at the end, because this is a Next.js project and we'll have to use use client if you're going to use use state or anything which is Frame of Motion related. So now since we have active and set active, what I can do is, and we already have testimonials, and I'll put it to testimonials of 0. So the first testimonial is always active. Now if I go ahead and say div, I'll have a Next.js image tag here, which is image. So we'll have an src of active.src, which will be this source of the image. Also want to have a class name of rounded 3XL, H full, and W full. This will make sure that the image takes up the entire available grid area, and we'll import this image from next image. Now the next part is giving it a height and width. Height will be, let's say, 500, width will be 500. Now we already have the image. We'll also give it an alt tag of, let's say, active.name, so that it is nicely arranged. So now if you see the image is there, onto the right side, what we want to do is we want to display the details of the person. So the first detail would be, let's say, h2 active.name that we already have. Now if you refresh, you see Sarah Chen here. I want to style it a bit. Class name equals font. I want bold, text, I want 2XL. And I also want to have the designation right below it. So I'll have as text base, text neutral 600. So it is a little toned down than the name of the person, and I'll have designation here. Cool. So now what we see here is product manager at TechFlow. Might be good to have 400 rather than 600. So it's a little more toned down. Awesome. Now right below this, we'll have quote of the person, the testimonial that you're trying to display, and we'll simply have it as active.quote. And I want to separate it from top. So I'll have LG MT, or let's say PT 10. Text neutral 800. So now if you see, you get this testimonial of the person, and that is what exactly we're looking for. Now I also want to have buttons that will flip through all the images that you see or the testimonials that you see. So I'll probably have a flex box with a gap of 10, which will have 2 buttons. One will be left and the other will be right. Now if you see we have 2 buttons left and right, I'll probably have some margin top to separate it from the rest of the content. And once you click on it, the testimonial should flip and go to the next one. For that, we'll have simple functions. On click would say handle next or handle prev, and on click onto this one would say handle next. Now these are pretty straightforward functions. What we want to do is when the person clicks next, the testimonial should flip on and go to the next one. But we also want to loop over all the testimonials that we already have. So it should always be going to the next one, no matter how many testimonials you have. So the simple way to do it is we'll have a function called handle next, and we'll do set active of previous. And what we'll do is we'll calculate the current index, which is already there, and we'll use the modulo operator to go to the next one. So whatever you see here, testimonials index of prev plus 1, and we'll have the modulo operator at the end, testimonials dot length. So with this, it'll make sure once we click onto the next one, it'll directly go to the next one. For now, we'll just handle prev and see what this looks like. No, handle prev is not defined. It is defined. Okay, now we have it. Now if you click onto the right one, it goes to the next one. Again, it goes to the next one, next one, next one, next one. So the right one works. Similar logic we need to put onto the left one, which will be prev. And this time, instead of addition, we'll be subtracting one. And again, we'll have the same logic in place. So testimonials, instead of this, we'll have testimonials dot length minus 1 plus testimonials dot index of prev. And there you have it. This will make sure the prev works and it goes to the prev one. Now you see we don't have the icon set, so we'll quickly go to tabular icons and we'll search for next arrow. And you see this arrow right here, we'll use it for our next button. And also I want to style the button also. So what I'll do is, let's say it's 6 W6 rounded full BG neutral 400 or 200, and we'll have this icon right here. Also want to have flex box, so it's center lined, justify center. So we have icon arrow at right, and we also have this for the left. I'll quickly import it and you'll have it here. Same classes we want to have onto this button as well, so it's nicely styled. Also we want to give a class name of h4w4 text black to this. Same classes we're going to give to the right arrow. So now if you go to the component, you see these are nicely aligned. Maybe I want to have a little less gap, and instead of 200 I'll have 100. This looks better. Now if we click on it, it moves. Perfect. So now is the time to align these images and see how you flip these images and bring them to the front. For that we have div, and we'll convert it to a motion div, and this motion comes from the package called framer motion, from framer motion. Now we have this motion div. I do not want to show just one image. I want to show multiple images, essentially all the images, and that will make sure that all the images behind the current image are properly aligned and they have some rotation in place. Now for this to happen, first we need to give a fixed height to this image that you see. So if you give it a fixed height, you won't see this content jumping around. So let's quickly go ahead and do it. First we'll give it a div, an outer div, and we'll wrap it up with class name of relative and h80 w full. Now this motion div is something that we're going to animate. How we do it is fairly simple. We don't want all this. Instead, since we talked about we want to have all the images in place, so we'll probably map over to the testimonials and give it a motion.div. Key would be active, which is the active testimonial, so that it is always unique. And once we do it, so give it that name, let's say. All right, it is happy now. Now inside of this, we want to have the image tag, which is down there at the bottom. And instead of active, we want to have a testimonial.src, testimonial.name. Since this is in place, now we can go ahead and animate the div that we were talking about, or animate the image that was there. So initial would be opacity 0. Scale would be, let's say, 0.9. So the images are a little scaled down. And we also want to check which image is currently active or which testimonial is currently active. So what we'll do is I'll create a function is active. It'll take index, which will be a number, and it will be testimonials.index of active. This will essentially tell me if the current active image is there or not. Here, the scale factor will depend upon the active image or the active testimonial. If the active image is currently the one which is showing, it has to be scale 1, otherwise it will be scale 0.9. So the active image will be bigger and all the other images will be smaller. So in that case is active index, otherwise 1, otherwise 0. I also want to have rotations, and rotate will be is active 0, otherwise we'll have random rotate. Now this random rotate function will give me random values between -10 degrees and 10 degrees, so that images are randomly rotated at the back. So we can do it with math.floor math.random into 21 and minus 10. So this can be 0. And this whole thing will be 0 and this will be minus 10. So we get the lower limit, which is 10, and this can be 1. So this is 21. 21 minus 10 will be 11, and we get the upper limit. So it will be between 11 and minus 10 inclusive. So here we'll be having random rotate. Either it is going to be 0 or it is going to be between minus 10 and 10. So these are the rotate values, and animate is going to be opacity is active 0.1. So opacity will be either 1 or 0.7. Scale will be similar, is active IDX, otherwise 1 or 0.95. Rotate will be the same, and Z index I wanted to talk about. So Z index will be, so the topmost image that you see will be having the highest Z index. Otherwise, all the images will have one lesser Z index. That means the bottommost will have 0, then 1, then 2, then 3, and the rest of the things will go away. So is active IDX, then 999. Otherwise, testimonials.length plus 2 minus IDX. Testimonials.length plus 2 because we want 2 more than testimonials. It can be 1 also, 2 also, 10 also, depending on how higher you want the Z index to be. Here plus 2 works like a charm, and minus IDX so that we have that staggering effect and all the other images are lined properly. So now since we have this in place, we also have exit animations, which is opacity 0, scale 0.9, rotate, random rotate. This won't take into account because right now we don't have animate presence. So in order for the exit animations to work, you wanted to have animate presence in place. Once you have animate presence in place, you can probably import it and this is going to work. So now you see, this is screwed up. Let's see how we can fix it. I think we didn't give position absolute and stuff. So, okay, class name. So this has to be absolutely positioned and it has to be at the center. And I want the animations to take place from the bottom, so I'll probably have origin bottom in place. So let's quickly refresh and you see this took place and this rotate is somehow weird. Also, okay, I think the problem is initially we want to have opacity 0, scale should be 0.9, this shouldn't be there. Rotate should be random rotate because we want to animate it. Since we have this, okay, it is screwed up. Let me see why it is working the way it is working right now.
A few moments later.
Okay, the solution to that was pretty simple. Z-index minus 100 had to be there in the initial version, and also all the other fixes were already there. So now if you see, if I refresh the page really quickly, you see the images coming on top, animating nicely. What we also want to do is, we also want to animate the Y of it, and Y is basically the translation that you see the image coming from the back and animating on top of the page is what this Y is going to achieve. So if it is active, I want to do a keyframe of 0 minus 80. Go from 0, go till minus 80 and come back to 0. Otherwise, it will always be 0. And once we have it, I also want to have started with initially 0. So now once we have it, let's see how it looks. So you see the image animates, comes from the back, comes at the top, and this is done. Super cool. So this image part is probably done, most definitely done, because you see all the images are perfectly rotated. The image at the top is working. What I also want to do, which is in the final version, is if you see the text also fades in. How we can achieve is it's pretty straightforward. The text that you see here, active.code. What I want to do is I want to split it into individual spans, and these motion spans is what we can animate with opacity and filter. So let's see if I split it and map over it. Let's say TIDX. What I want to do it, I want to create a motion.span. Key would be T, or let's say plus IDX, and I want to do it this way. Also want to add a little space at the end. So what you can do here is initially opacity would be 0, filter, blur, 10px would be there. So the initial text is a bit blurred, and when you animate it, opacity would be 1 and filter would be blur 0px. We also want to have a transition prop which will specify the delay of it, and delay I want to have 0.05 into IDX. So you get a stagger effect at the end, which will make sure everything is animating smoothly. So now if you see, I don't see it at all. Let's see what's missing. Class name, text, white, inline block, not text white, text black. Let's see if it works. It did not. What's that? Active.code.split. Map TIDX, opacity 0, filter blur 10px, opacity, okay, opacity 0, opacity 1. So now if you see it blurs in, but you see there is no space at the end. So what I'll do is I'll probably add a space at the end of it. And okay, so now I see everything animates really nicely. And once you click on it, it goes to the next one. What I also want to do with this is I also want the entire thing to animate, which is the heading, the designation, and the code. I'll wrap it in a motion.div, and again, I'm going to animate it. Initial opacity 0, y, let's say 0 or -10. Animate opacity 1, y 0. Transition would be duration 0.4. Ease would be ease in out. And let's see if that works or not. So the first one did work, but you'll see the next one doesn't work. And this is because we didn't specify a key. So frame of motion, the motion component doesn't know when to animate what. So we'll probably have an active.src here so that it knows that the key has changed and it has to animate it again. And it animates smoothly. So this was the component, the testimonial component that you can create with frame of motion in TailwindCSS. I hope you learned a bit about frame of motion and how you could pretty much use framer motion, which is now motion.dev, by the way, to create beautiful animation into your website. If you like this video, do like it, do subscribe my channel. I'm new here. I'm trying to make a lot of videos and build a lot of projects. So if you liked it, do give it a like and do give it a thumbs up. And also don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.